Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. My name is Steve Brennan, and I'm from Carhartt. Who in the room has heard of Carhartt? Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. Who here owns Carhartt? Yes. All right. Good. Thank you. So I'll get a little bit more into Carhartt in a second and myself, but I wanted to start by saying, again, thank you for having me. Thanks to WIT for having me. I've got a little story to tell around, my experience as being a leader in a data management organization, and really some value that I've experienced over being able to tell a story about our world when it comes to justifying spend, when it comes to growing, things like that. So hopefully there's a little bit you guys can take away from today, if anything. So before I get started, who in this room is in a data management organization at their company? Perfect. Who is in a data management organization in their company? Perfect. That's my favorite data joke. Thank you. Thanks for entertaining me. So a little bit about Carhartt before I get into this. It sounds like many of you are aware already. I'm not sure if you all know, 1889 is when the company was founded by Hamilton Carhartt, and to this day it's still family owned. So very, very proud company, really focused on durable workwear, as many of you know. Really the core essence is about durability, quality, and having the consumer's best interest in mind in terms of making sure that they have what they need to do their job. A little bit about me. Oh, looks like the font didn't quite transfer over, so might be a little ugly. Okay, that's okay. All right, so bear with me on the font. It didn't translate well. My name is Steve. I like data, if you can read that. My role at the organization is oversee integration, MDM, BI, advanced analytics, really all things data. My peers in IT are the app delivery teams, security, and infrastructure, so everything else is me. And I love this stuff. I've been doing it for a long time, and hopefully, again, my story helps you guys out a little bit. So I joined about 16 months ago, so still relatively new to the organization. Granted that it's 1889, so I'm very new. When I was asked to define, in my title, you may have seen my fancy title at the beginning, it's got the word data strategy in it, so I better sure understand what a data strategy is to be able to be successful in my role. So I went out to the business the first few months on the job, and I interviewed people, just how are we feeling about data in general? What do you think the executives asked me I thought we should be doing with, what do you think that they thought I should be doing when it comes to a data strategy? What are some examples of the things that my business colleagues are asking about? Single source of truth. That's good. That's a true data professional there. This is really what I heard, right? And it doesn't get much more buzzworthy than our industry, right? To all my software vendors, that if any of them are in the room, if you could stop sending emails and magazine articles about this stuff, that'd be great. Because as we all know, as data professionals, there's a lot more to data than these things. I'm not knocking, this is the future, don't get me wrong, this is the future. We're doing a lot of these things, but this seems to be all folks wanted to talk about. When, as we all know, there's a lot more under the covers that we're responsible for to make these successful and to make these sustainable, right? So that's why we have to be able to tell a story. So how do we define a data strategy? At Carhartt, this is it. My intention is not to go through each box one by one, but you can see there's a whole wealth of things that we are responsible for besides big data and going to the cloud. We've got to worry about those things, and they're in there, but what about people and process? What about governance? What about culture? Do people feel like they have what they need? Is there a feedback loop to be able to give feedback to the data team about quality issues? Are we measuring quality? How are we integrating for the future to make things more real time? These are the things we all think about on a daily basis besides just big data, right? Shoot. Well, it's going to lose a little bit because of the font, but bear with me. So our roadmap to success at Carhartt is broken into 4 phases. First is the foundation, and that's where storytelling really comes in, because that's the boring side of our job, but it's key for sustainability. We did that last year, so my role, again, 16 months in. Last year we focused on the foundation, getting back to basics. Do we know the definitions of terms? Do we know where data is flowing? Do we have a central place and a single point of truth for some key information for our business? Do we know what those key KPIs for the company are? That's what we spent all of our time last year, which now sets us up for success this year around scale. So now that we're excited about big data, now we're ready. And that's where we're investing right now. So if you guys ask me where are we at on that journey, we're still pretty new. We're a little bit behind, I would say, just in full transparency. But we have a goal this year to stand up a Hadoop environment, to stand up some of these more advanced techniques. And we've already hired our first data scientist. We're very excited to have that person start in a few weeks here. So heavily investing in this area this year and into the future. So now we can scale. We can scale people, and we can scale our breadth of ability to help the business, where historically we've been helping just maybe pockets of the business. Next year is assuming continued success. We're going to get into what I call using the crystal ball. So not only are we using predictive analytics for an insight, but we're operationalizing that into our operations. For Carhartt, we are a manufacturer of the clothes. We're also the seller of the clothes. So we have many channels of business. We have our website, we have our own retail stores, and then we have a huge wholesale business. So being able to look for opportunities for efficiency, using the tools like Eric said this morning, and actually operationalizing it, that's the key. And then year 4 or into the future, we feel we have what we need to not only look back at the history, but to drive the future. So the art of storytelling, G. All you gotta do is laugh, right? You gotta go with it. So the art of storytelling, right? So that foundation, there's some boring stuff that we do. Master data management, I love it. Don't get me wrong. It is boring. Data governance, boring, right? My CIO, when I joined the company, he said, data governance is important, but your goal is to keep me out of any of those conversations. I get it. So entertain me here, because my thought is to go through some scenarios of things that we've done and how we've been able to successfully do them, and how the storytelling really helped us be successful. So the first one is MDM. Again, I truly love this stuff. We had great success last year. Talon, who's here, is who we're using. Kurt's in the back. He's a great local rep here. I will say real quick, he's to blame for my mug being on that 50-inch screen at their booth. So if you guys all do me a favor and go see Kurt. Kurt, raise your hand. Tell him to take that damn thing down, okay? It's killing me. My head is not that big. Anyway, so MDM. So we are powered by Talent. We implemented this the spring of last year, coming out on our 1 year, which is, we love it. How do we talk about MDM, and how does the industry talk about MDM? It's less complex, right? It allows new systems that are coming into the enterprise an opportunity to look for one place to go for information. We get that. If you look at what's going on in my diagrams here, this first one on top, that's our data model for consumer and for customer, 2 domains that we treat very differently. Customer is our wholesale partner, and consumer is the direct consumer that is ultimately wearing the clothes. We treat them very differently, as you can imagine. We care about different things, as you can imagine. It's not just one table where you've got name, address, phone number, right? At face value, it seems simple, but that's the data model, right? It's complex. We've got history, we've got versioning, we've got channel, we've got where they came from. There's a lot more going on than just what's their name. And then behind it is our integration. All the things, because we're a multi-channel brand, we're getting data from consumers and of consumers on many different ways. If any other system were to come into the enterprise, which by the way, when we brought in Talend last year, we also brought in a CRM, Salesforce, which helped really, the case around making sure that people understood what MDM was. We said these two have to be tightly coupled together. But Salesforce would have had a headache trying to figure out, how do I pull all that consumer customer data into Salesforce? We've done that for them. It's real-time ready. We didn't start this by limping in and saying yesterday is fine. We actually implemented inside the Talent tool queuing technology to allow us to bring in data real time, which was a key point for us. So that at any moment that something happened on our website, we had that information mastered within our MDM. And then day one, we simplified and we deduped 1% of our consumer data. Wow, 1%, right? Not very exciting. But if you can imagine how much data we have, that is pretty substantial. If I had this slide in a business meeting or showing our chief marketing officer or CFO for that matter, would they get excited by this? Not at all. Do they get excited by this? ever? No, they won't. So there's just a different way to spin this. We merged 50,000 consumers within 6 hours of Talon going live. That's 50,000 human beings that receive our product, that we interact with, and communicate with, and market to. Less duplicate messaging. Marketers get that right away. That's negative. That's a really negative perception about us. There's also a subtle one here. The key word is fallen off here called loyalty. Carhartt.com, check it out if you haven't been there. We have something called Carhartt Bucks. Plug, plug, wink, wink. And the beauty of our loyalty program is it compounds. The more you earn, the more you save. And if you have 2 different records for yourself, for whatever reason, different channels you've come in over time, you're not maximizing that benefit. So again, marketers get that right away. That's huge. MDM, it's common language now at Carhartt, which is great. Any questions on that before I move on? How many of you, by the way, have done an MDM implementation yourself? How many of you have failed at doing it one or two times in your career? Yes, right? The key here is to be patient. You have to repeat yourself over and over and over, especially to your IT colleagues who they have other ways to get the data. So you're coming in with a new system of record. They don't have to go to you because obviously you got it from somewhere else. You've got to be patient though. In my experience, you just have to tell the MDM story over and over and over again because that's ultimately how you get that to stick. And then once it sticks, you're golden, and then people start to really see the value like what we did with the 50,000 merged consumers. Objective 2, I kind of already said it, but data governance. It does not get any more boring than this. If you look at what anything in data governance says, what do you need to do? You need a governance committee. You need executive sponsors. You need IT directors and corporate stewards to come together and meet quarterly to review SLA breaches for data quality issues. Who the hell goes to those meetings, right? Here's the thing. The first one, super exciting. You're fired up. You're saying, okay, I've got this agenda. I got everybody to say yes to come. You talk about what you're going to do, and then the meeting's over. The second meeting, all right, cool. We've got this one item we want to discuss to see if this really works. Felt good. Meeting 3, meeting 4, I guarantee with just focusing on doing it for doing its sake, it's not going to last very long. Because what you're doing, as we all know as professionals, putting a meeting on someone's calendar is borrowing their time. What else should they be doing? And is something like this really beneficial to them? Is that resonating with you guys? Yeah. So this is everything that I read, and this is really how it's spun. But I think it's a lot simpler than that, guys. And I'm just going to go through a scenario. A little bit cheesy with my little persona images here, but I think it helps illustrate the point. So I've got Chris, may or may not report to me. She says, hey, Sue, I'd love 30 minutes to go over a scenario that is hindering our ability to digitally market to 100,000 website visitors with a proper demographic messaging. Eric talked about this morning. Why is that important? Targeted messages convert way, way better than just blanket messages. We all know that in the marketing world. So she says, wow, that's an issue. Sure. Does Mike know? Mike's on her team. He's the BA that could fix the website issue. Yes, Mike will be at the meeting too. We already have a proposed fix, but we want to make sure that we're not missing anything. Isn't that data governance right there? Right? Don't we do this anyway in the hallways, in conversations in passing, in email exchanges? We discovered an issue. Maybe it came in via a ticket, or maybe a data analyst who's responsible for looking at MDM tools and data quality and stewardship profiling tools saw an issue. And when it's big like that, you're going to get everybody's attention to come together to make a decision. That's what people do, is they make decisions to make the business better. That's data governance. So my point here is data governance is already happening. We're just looking to put a bow on it, right? With some process, some repeatable understanding of, oh yeah, that is what we're doing. And that is going to be important for the legal person to come from time to time because there might be some PII-related information. Maybe they don't have to come every time, and that's okay too. But we don't have to get lost in just the structure to measure our success as being able to deploy data governance. Make sense? The third one, legacy, I don't know how to pronounce that without the N, so Legacy modernization. This one's more for assuming you're positioned within IT or not. This really goes to interacting with other IT professionals that have other jobs and other responsibilities besides yours living in the data world. So we can all geek out as data professionals and talk through things like we need a SOA architecture, so we need an ESB and a message queuing technology, and I'm sorry I'm nerding out on here, on you guys, so we can build contracts between systems and it's gonna be amazing, right? No value other than what we see. Do you guys get the value of this right here, this statement, as data people? Yes. Here's why. We're the only team in the IT organization that can see the forest for the trees. And that's not a knock to the app dev teams and the other teams, but we see all of it, especially in BI. You want to get somebody exposed to the business and how the company really works, rotate them through BI and have them figure out why a corporate dashboard is or isn't working. You learn everything because the data is what drives the organization. We all know that. So we have to remind ourselves that not everybody else sees this stuff, understands that there's efficiency loss in terms of data moving back and forth between systems, that there is value in having a conversation around documenting best practices and really staying standardized across systems. So instead, what if we just talk through some of these aha moments that I know my IT peers get full well? How do you know? So right now, by the way, Carhartt does business in Europe. Who's got a company that has business in Europe and is concerned about GDPR? Right, scary, big law that's dropping in May. That's vague, so you gotta be conservative on your interpretation. GDPR requires, for those of you that may not be familiar, this should be jaw-dropping for anybody in the data field. The consumer, the user, has the ability to contact you as a company and say, delete me. Not just opt me out from an email campaign, but literally remove that you've ever known anything about me in your organization. Think about all the places you probably have that consumer's information throughout your organization. You've got your website collecting information. You've got some type of data store, operational data store. You've got your enterprise data warehouse. You've got Excel files. You've got other partners you may or may not be sending data to. Delete that person. So you need to know and prove that you can prove where that data is and that you have the ability to act on that. So as new connection points between systems come on board, how are you going to keep track of that as a centralized team or even decentralized team when it's just living in Word docs or in a documentation system somewhere? You need tools like that, and that's where it's like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Wouldn't it be nice, so again, we've got many, many channels, and each line of business traditionally, because they've kind of added on over time, has a different source system, a different process, business process. Each one has a different way of describing what an order is. So any downstream system, like our ERP that's responsible for actually processing the order, has to have 4 or 5 different translations to understand, okay, that's an order. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a shared internal contract of what an order is, XML, JSON, whatever the heck you want to call it, doesn't matter, but that you can agree upon that. That starts to force the conversation around needing some type of orchestration layer beyond point to point. IT professionals go, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's a headache to understand what the heck I'm receiving at any given time. And then the last one, wherever the heck that one was, I can't remember, so I'm gonna move on. So objective 4, sustainability. Hopefully you're maybe getting a sense for my belief system in terms of data management. It's about things being sustainable. This world can't live in a heroic moment after moment after moment, because what do you end up with? You end up with a mess on your hands. This, going back to the beginning point, this is all that is being discussed when we talk about data strategy, at least at the beginning. And I've had to do that job of storytelling to tell them there's more to it, and we can't necessarily get here right now, given our people and our processes that we have in place. But this is where we are going. So don't get me wrong, this is where we are going, but it's gotta be more than that. Here's a question. I think this is an aha moment that I had when talking through how do you sell sustainability. What does a bug look like when there's a bug in software? Right? Somebody submits a ticket, there's an issue with a web form or whatever the heck it is, it gets escalated to being an issue that goes into the backlog, the team starts developing it, they fix it. What happens when they fix it? The problem completely goes away, like it never existed before, right? It's very in the moment. What happens when there's a problem or a bug in the data? We live with that stuff forever, right? You either live with it forever, and you have to have this tribal knowledge of how to work around those issues that you've built into your systems. I was talking to someone earlier, you have an opportunity to greenfield start over from time to time. Or you take a month to do a data migration and you ultimately fix it. Bugs in data are painful, right? I guarantee, I got a bet that everybody in this world that's responsible for a data set in their organization has some known issue in their data that they just have to remember to set a flag or to filter out something. Be honest, yes? Yes, I'm gonna raise my hand like very high, right? So that's where I think you can tell that story too, that sustainability, we've gotta do those practices. We've gotta have some of that methodology around the boring things like governance and oversight and documentation in order to do everything else. Because from a scale perspective, in order to put the energy into those things, you've got to be able to forget the things that you've already had in your head, because that's not sustainable. That's not scalable. When new people come into the organization, they all have to get that lump on their head before they can figure out how to do Carhartt data. That's not really the right approach. It's about all three. It's the typical three: people, process, technology, right? We've got to invest in all of them to move all of those things back to that first eye chart that I had, to be successful with data management in general, to ultimately do sustained analytics. You can certainly, and you should certainly, do spikes. I think there's value in a lot of what we talk about in demos and things is the opportunity to value, and that's key. Sarah, before here, if you were in the room, spoke about MVP and just getting something out there to get the buy-in. I could not agree more. So I'm not saying not that. What I'm saying is once you get that momentum, you do need to bake in some time to pause, because that ultimately, spike after spike after spike, you're not going to be able to sustain that. We all know that. Those of us that have built systems over the years, you've got to be a little bit more methodical. You come across very boring, and you come across as the grumpy one in the room that's saying, no, we can't do that right now. But I will tell you, that is the key to success, in my personal opinion, around doing that the right way. That's really all I had, guys. A little short. I know it's lunchtime, so maybe I get you guys to the tables first. But before I do, I wanted to open up for questions. I talked through a lot of different scenarios, so I'm guessing there's maybe some questions. Yes?
So, what was your approach to putting together a business case and then subsequently aligning the people from all the different departments that you need to have a successful data management program?
In general?
Yeah.
So, yeah, what were my steps to success in order to gain buy-in across the organization? I would say the biggest word that I'll use is empathy. So I put together a deck 4 months into the job that basically just reiterated everything that I heard. And I asked my team, the existing team that was already in the organization, to have some thick skin for a moment. Because perception is reality. And what people are saying about their feeling about their ability to access data, to know what's going on, and have their finger on the pulse, I just reiterated that back. And what I did is I took all of that feedback. Obviously, I benefited from being the new guy, not actually having to feel the burden of receiving the feedback, but I took it all and I compiled it, and I came up with themes. And then I said, okay, what are the big dreaming moments that I'm hearing everybody say? And in those conversations, I had to get them past the big data conversation. I say, yeah, I get that. Like, I'm reading the same magazines you are. But what do you need as a business to do your job? Do you have, the descriptive analytics to just know how you did yesterday? Do you need real time? Is that even a thing that you are worried about? Or in retail, a lot of it's still very cyclical in yesterday's news. And then I crafted basically dreaming statements. What if the data is in one spot and you could go to one place to access your information? What if there was a team of people inside Carhartt that wore the Carhartt gear, that were sifting through the data more than, frankly, what a lot of our business colleagues' questions are? They're surface. right? Especially when you don't have what you need from a descriptive. They're very like, oh God, all I got to do is slap a report together and you've got what you need. But to get them excited about staffing a data science team where they're sifting through the millions and millions and millions of records, looking for other correlations beyond the obvious ones for us. So for us, weather is huge. When it gets cold, Carhartt does well. It's not a surprise. But getting them to realize maybe we can crack that code and show that there's another leading indicator. Because predicting weather, I don't know if anybody's done it, you can't. Past 14 days, you can't really do it. So if you guys have answers, please, I'd love to hear them because that would be huge for us. But that's really it. I got them to dream. And really, I think I benefited from the culture, too, to be honest. The company was ready, and they were getting frustrated with their lack of ability to really feel like we had our finger on the pulse. But I think, and in addition to that, it's kind of a long-winded answer for the rest of the group, but hopefully this is helping. I did add incremental value along the way to kind of prove that if we did take our time, it got easier. And we put together some cases around moving to a more modern visualization tool and showing that having cross-functional discussions and the worthwhile debate of having a discussion around what's the right definition of a term, whereas before we might just listen to who the louder person in the room was, coming in as a neutral party and saying, whoa, that's not what he says, that's not what she says, let's duke it out, right? In a constructive way, let's figure it out, because ultimately everybody needs to measure Carhartt the same way. And once we did that, I think the aha moment went off for them, like, okay, this makes sense. That help? Yes, in the back. Thank you. My knee-jerk answer is that tools are last. Tools are the least important. With all due respect to my tool vendors in the room and in the back and out in the hallway, I'm going to go off the script a little bit. So I had an opportunity to talk with Bill Inman, who is one of the grandfathers of the data warehousing practice. He wrote the book. It's Kimball and Inman are the two kind of traditional EDW techniques. And I had dinner with him one night, and I said, Bill, what's changed over the 40, 50 years that you've been consulting? He said, I talked to my friends who also write books, and he said, I'm the only guy in the industry that is able to write the same book over and over and have it sell out. So I couldn't agree more with him on that, because that's kind of how I feel about tools. So you got to have the right people, which for me, you can teach tools. It's really, you got to have that craftiness, that eagerness, that hunger to get in there, and that insatiable desire to just figure out what the problem is. Problem solvers. And then on the process, you need it. Light process, I'm never going to go TOGAF or ITIL or anything like that on data, but you need to have some standards, some non-negotiables around documentation and taking that energy and trying to make it solve 10 problems with one solution, as opposed to just spot implementations. Yes?
As you talked about getting the business excited for master data management and that single source of truth, what have you found most effective to have people kind of let go of their fiefdoms of their own data and start to look at one central source of data?
Yeah, that's from a change management, that's tough, especially with IT. It's an additional system, so it appears more complex. And two, there's definitely some territory fiefdom stuff going on. I think it really comes down to the reason that you would install MDM is not just to put data in one spot. That's easy, right? You copy paste, right? You set up some ETL packages and you're done. But to sell that vision around, now not only is it centralized, I've got a team dedicated to studying that data outside of there being an issue, right? When there's an issue, yeah, we dig into data, whatever database that maybe it originated from, and we figure it out and we fix it. But to have a team that's got the right tools on top of the data to study it, to profile it, to bubble up those rules, and then tune the rules. Obviously, the goal would be to tune those rules so that you can let in the right amount of quality. People get that, and it is still a little bit intangible, but I think when you can say, look, now I've got a group of people that are proactively looking for issues before the consumer tells us that there's a problem, you can wrap your head around that. Yes? Correct. Yeah, so there's a handshake between our loyalty system and our MDM system. What's interesting is there was a lot of change last year related to some technology modernization. So we brought in CRM, we brought in MDM, and we brought in a new loyalty partner at the exact same time. So it was quite intricate project managing all that, but we made sure that the loyalty system and the MDM system had like a handshake so that we had like-minded keys, so we understood what was happening. And then ultimately, all we really need out of loyalty is the loyalty points to be able to do some modeling inside our internal systems to understand the propensity to buy and what kind of buyer they are. Any other questions? Well, thank you for the questions, and thank you for your time, everybody. Hopefully you guys took a little bit out of this. I'll be around all day, so if you guys have any more questions, please don't hesitate. All right, thank you.